Round the World Lit Audio. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Episode 5. Chapters 8 and 9. The final episode. Full narration script. Channel intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week. Free to listen. Chapter recap. In Episode 4, the hottest day of the summer, 5 people drove to New York. At the Plaza Hotel, Tom and Gatsby confronted each other over Daisy. Gatsby said, "She never loved you." Daisy said, "I did love him once. But I loved you too." That was not enough. Tom won. He sent them home in Gatsby's car. In the Valley of Ashes, Myrtle ran into the road. She had seen the yellow car before. She thought it was Tom. The car did not stop. That night Nick looked through the Buchanan window and saw Tom and Daisy at the kitchen table together, a plate of cold chicken between them, their heads close. Outside in the dark, Gatsby stood guard over a woman who was not thinking about him. Episode 5. Chapters 8 and 9. The final episode. Chapter 8. The night and the morning after. Nick could not sleep. He went to Gatsby's house before dawn, went through the dark with the specific quality of someone who needs to see another person, and cannot explain exactly why, who has a sense that something is about to happen and wants to be present for it. Gatsby was still awake. He had not slept. He had been in his house since coming back from the Buchanans, had dismissed his servants the day before, had been alone in the enormous mansion, with the lights on, had been waiting. Nick said, "Come away. Come east with me. You should leave." Gatsby said, "I can't leave Daisy." He said it with the absolute simplicity of a man for whom this is not a decision but a fact, not a choice but a condition. He could not leave Daisy the way a man cannot leave his own shadow, because she was not separate from him, had not been separate from him for 5 years, had been the organizing principle around which every other thing in his life had been arranged. He told Nick what had happened in the car. Daisy had been driving. Gatsby had offered to drive because she was upset after the confrontation at the plaza, and she had taken the wheel instead, had wanted to drive, had said it would calm her. They had come through the Valley of Ashes and Myrtle had run into the road and Daisy had not stopped. She had not stopped. Gatsby said, "I would have stopped. But Daisy, she couldn't stop. She kept going and I told her I'd handle everything." He was going to protect her. That was what he had decided in the car, in the moment after the impact, that he would handle it, that he would be the one who had been driving, that Daisy would not have to bear what had happened. He asked Nick about Daisy. He said, "Do you think she'll call me today?" Nick looked at him, at the man who had built the mansion and thrown the parties, and crossed the bay in his mind 1,000 times, who had made himself into J. Gatsby for this specific person, who was now asking if she would call, and felt something that he could not name, a mixture of pity and admiration and the specific sadness of watching someone love more than the person they love can receive. He said, "I don't think she will." Nick left for work. He was the last person to see Gatsby alive. In Wilson's garage in the Valley of Ashes, something was happening. Myrtle's husband had stood over her body in the road, and had been taken into the garage by his neighbors, and during the night the shock had cured itself into something harder, not grief, but certainty, the specific certainty of a man who has decided he knows what happened and who is responsible. Tom had passed through the garage on his way back to East Egg the previous night. Wilson had asked him, "Was that your car?" "The yellow car." Tom had said, "No, I haven't seen that car all afternoon." He had given Wilson a name, Gatsby. He had not said directly, Tom Buchanan was too careful for that, but he had given Wilson enough to find the direction, the name, the address across the bay. Wilson walked to West Egg. He found the mansion. He found Gatsby floating on a mattress in the swimming pool. Gatsby had not used the pool all summer, had been meaning to, had told his groundskeeper not to drain it yet because he intended to swim before the season ended. He was floating in the pool in the last warmth of September, in the specific stillness of someone who is waiting. Wilson shot him. Then Wilson shot himself. Nick came home to find the pool disturbed, the servants gathered, the telephone ringing in the empty house. He picked up the receiver. A voice said, "Hello, is Gatsby there?" Nick said, "Who is this?" The voice said, I wanted to talk to him." The voice hung up. It was one of the party guests, someone who had been to the parties and eaten the food and drunk the liquor, and speculated about who Gatsby was and had thought of him, even now, as someone to call for the ordinary purposes of social life. Nick put the receiver down. He called Daisy. She and Tom had left. They had left that afternoon, had packed and gone without leaving an address, without leaving a forwarding number, without saying goodbye. They had the specific capacity of careless people, Nick thought. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money and their carelessness and let other people clean up the mess they had made. He called Meyer Wolfsheim, the business associate, the man who had fixed the World Series, the man who had known Gatsby before any of them. He asked him to come to the funeral. Wolfsheim wrote back. He said he could not get mixed up in it. He had learned long ago never to get mixed up in the deaths of friends. Nick called everyone he could think of. Nobody came to the funeral. The people who had filled Gatsby's house, hundreds of them, every weekend, all summer, were not available. They had their own lives, and Gatsby had been, for them, a party and not a person, a source of entertainment and not a relationship. And now that the entertainment was over, there was nothing remaining that required their presence. One person came, an old man with owl-eyed spectacles, the man Nick had found in the library at one of the early parties, marveling at the real books. He had come. He stood at the grave in the rain and said, when it was over, "The poor son of a bitch." That was the eulogy. Chapter 9. The Green Light. Nick's father had told him, when he was young, whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. He had quoted this at the beginning of the novel. He thought about it now, at the end of the summer, in the aftermath of everything, packing to go back to the Midwest, back to the world he had come from. He thought about Gatsby. He thought about what Gatsby had been, not what he had pretended to be. Not Jay Gatsby of the parties and the mansion and the shirts, but what he actually had been, which was a man from North Dakota named James Gatz, who had decided at 17 to be something extraordinary and had achieved it through means that were not entirely legitimate and had aimed all of it at a single purpose that turned out to be insufficient. He thought Gatsby believed in the green light. He thought the green light was Daisy, and the green light was the American dream, and the green light was the idea that the future would be better than the past and that you could reach it if you only extended yourself far enough. He thought, we are all reaching for the green light. He went to the dock at the end of the summer, Gatsby's dock, where Gatsby had stood so many nights, looking across the bay to the light at the end of Dace's dock, the light that had organized his entire existence. He looked across the water. He thought about what Gatsby had not understood, what the novel has been saying from the first page, from the moment Nick saw the figure reaching in the dark. Gatsby had not understood that the green light was unreachable not because of distance but because of time. You cannot reach the past. The green light is always on the other side of the water, and the water is always the years between you and what you have lost, and you cannot cross them. You can only go forward. But going forward was not what Gatsby knew how to do. So he had reached, and the reaching was the most American thing Nick had ever seen, the most American and the most heartbreaking, because the reaching was real, and the faith was real, and the love was real, and the object of all of it was gone before Gatsby finished making himself worthy of it. Nick thought, so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. He left Long Island. He went back to the Midwest. The summer was over. Series close. You have reached the end of The Great Gatsby, by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Published in the United States in 1925. Written in France while Fitzgerald was 30, looking back at America across the Atlantic, seeing it more clearly for the distance. He considered it his finest work. He was right. What Fitzgerald argued is this: the American dream is real, and it is fatal. The belief that you can make yourself into whatever you have decided to be, that identity is a choice, that the past can be overcome by sufficient will, that the green light is reachable, is the most powerful and the most dangerous idea America has produced. It is powerful because it is sometimes true. It is dangerous because it requires you to believe that the past is not the past, that time is not time, that you can reach across the water and touch the light that is always on the other side. Gatsby reached. He always reached. The reaching was magnificent and it killed him. And it was also, in the end, the thing that made Nick love him, the only one worth loving in the novel, the one whose faith was absolute, whose dream was complete, whose belief in the green light never wavered even when the light was just a light on a dock. So we beat on. Thank you for listening to The Great Gatsby on Around the World Lit Audio. Subscribe so you never miss a chapter. A new episode arrives every week.